And during our Real Talk segment today, we're going to be discussing 3 things to prioritize when selling your home. I got to tell you, I absolutely love this part of the business, selling a home, but there are some pitfalls that sellers need to be aware of. So our first one is keeping your emotions in check when selling a home. Now, I think the first time this really struck me was probably about 12, 13 years ago when I helped a good friend of mine sell their family home where they had raised their 2 daughters. And we're going through the whole entire process. And I've got a inspection response from the buyer stating that they're agreeing to the solutions that the seller provided on the inspection contingency. And the seller just kind of turns and looks at me with just a little bit of a tear in his eye. And he says, "So this is it?" And I said, "Yeah, this is it. They agreed to it." And what I realized is what he meant is this is it. They're selling their family home. And it really just struck me as understanding that the dynamic that comes into play when selling a home is very, very emotional. It's emotional for a first-time home seller. And one thing that's unique about a first-time home seller is sometimes they're the owner of that house for over 30 years. So as a seller, to be prepared for this, you may want to follow some tips to emotionally separate from your home. It's not going to be easy. One of the tips that recently one of my past sellers suggested is just move your stuff out. Now, what does that mean? Well, they had a bunch of stuff that living in the home for 30 plus, well, it was 20 years in this case. And they were trying to figure out what they were going to keep and what they were going to donate and what they were going to trash. And, we have people that can come in and help folks with that. But one of the biggest challenges with this particular situation was there were time constraints. So in hindsight, she said to me, "I think in the future, what you should tell somebody in my situation is just move our stuff into storage. Just take it all of it into storage. And then that way we can kind of go through that storage and sorting process over time." So emotions are a big deal. And when it comes to pricing and prepping the home, if the emotions come to play, sometimes it can cloud your vision. So that takes us to the second point that I was going to make as far as things to prioritize. And the second thing to prioritize is to get your home ready properly. So oftentimes, I can say this politely, but the best thinking is what led homeowners to do the type of remodeling or decorating that they did. Let me just say that again. The best thinking led homeowners to the remodeling or decorating that they have done. And I am not the only one who has walked into a house and said, "What?" Right? So it was their best thinking. So it's important to have an independent third party, preferably not your real estate agent, because I have to tell you, as far as interior decorating and stuff like that, I'm no pro. But find a third party, an independent third party as a home seller, and ask them to come in and say, what are the trends this year? What should we do to either lightly remodel or redecorate, so that you have an experience where future buyers can actually picture themselves in your home, right? So some people may not like green colored carpet. Others may, right? But the thing that we do know is that there's a bell curve on some of these things. So it's a really strong recommendation that when you are preparing the house, that you allow your emotions to step out and the professionals to come in and show you how to present it in the best light. Because every seller at the end of the day, whether they're a first-time home seller or they've done it 5 times in the last 25 years, every home seller has a unique feel that they need to step out of and allow the masses to be able to see themselves in their house. Now, the third most important priority when selling your home is pricing. And all 3 of these things kind of come together. So emotions come into play when setting a pricing, because you may see value on it, but you've got to trust the professionals to help present to you a price that will reasonably allow the largest amount of potential qualified buyers to see your home as a value. Now, we're in an extreme hot market, and a lot of agents may consider just doing anything they want to price a house. It's like, I feel like that should be $975. Let's go. But it does take a lot of care to consider where we've come from and what is happening in that current market. So When it comes to pricing the house, here's how we do it. It starts out way in advance prior to us meeting with the seller. But what we do is we start to look at the automated valuation models, those items out there that give us a clue as to where to aim the target. I kind of treat it like a bullseye on the wall. That is our automated valuation number. So we get a number where there's a grouping, and sometimes that grouping is really tight, meaning, you're seeing between 825 and 860. And sometimes it's a little all over, where one may say 775 and the other one says, 860. That's a much broader target. So after doing that, there are three things to look at. There's those people that have sold, which is history, those that are pending, which is current history, and then those that you're competing with. So in order to price a house right, it's a moving target right now because there's a lot of escalations and changes, but you have to start with history. Then you go to the pendings. And in some cases, you'll get some insight in the neighborhood, but because inventory has been so low right now, there's not as many case studies. I mean, not as many homes that compare with this specific home. And then finally, you go with the active. So what are you actively going to be competing against this week? So we may do that pricing strategy way before we meet the seller for the first time. Then we meet with them and we learn some different things about the home that we didn't know from the automated valuations. And then as we get ready to determine a pricing strategy, and then finally the week of, that's how it's priced. So there are a lot of things to consider when selling your house, a lot of things to prioritize. But if you start with keeping your emotions in check, prepare the house properly, and then price it right, that is, to borrow Laura's terms, a recipe for success. So I guess I had to throw that in there.